Hi all you lovely kings, queens, and in-betweens. My name is Elaine, and today I'm going to be talking about the gear I'm currently wearing in Unison League. I've gotten a lot of requests for this video, so I'm just going to take a few moments to go through my gear one little bit at a time. First, I'm just going to show you my current stats on my character. This is my gear score, and it gives you a basic breakdown of my build. From here, we're going to just go into my gear because I'm showing you my Mage character. I've put a lot of emphasis on both my weapon gear and monster gear and a lot less emphasis on my defensive gear, which you can see just from my stats. But as we continue to go through my build, you'll see how much more emphasis I've put into these two stats as opposed to my other stats. First thing you might notice when we go into my gear is that I do have a lot of remaining cost, which I'm using eventually on scaling up my gear. I currently have gear that could be a little stronger in terms of cost, and I want to make sure I have enough to go around, so I'm just holding that cost for later. The first thing I'm going to go over is my weapons, and I'm going to work my way through my defensive gear eventually to my monsters. If we scroll through all my weapons, you can see that I've filled out all these slots because as a mage, I think it's important to have a lot of weapons. Because I wanted a blessing, I've started off with blessing gear in each of my main slots. So in my weapon slot, you'll see that I have Crepuscular Nyx's Torch Staff, which you can get and then make better with some effort after doing the Nyx quests. So as you can see, this is a pretty low cost staff. It's only 37 and it has been awakened. Its effect is that it increases magic ability power by XXL, and it increases dark elemental defense by 60. It activates as a blessing skill when the staff, the hair ornament, and the outfit are equipped in the main slot, which is why this is in my main slot. Activates when a magic attack ability is used, and its activation rate is M. So I'm getting a nice little bonus for having all these in my main slot, and that's why I have it equipped. I believe it's a 20% boost, but I will double check that and post if I made a mistake in the video during my editing process. So that's my first piece of gear. From there, I've moved on to a water piece, which the game really wants me to have. I have several copies of this one, but it is the Water Mirror Staff. It increases magic ability power, recovers 5 cost, and scales with the number of staff type gear equipped up to a max of 3XL. I really like the ones that scale up with staff or clothing or other specific types of gear like that, not with an elemental type, because especially in the case of a mage, you're always going to be equipping staffs. It's really easy to just collect them and collect gear with that specific set of words on its ability and make things scale and make things stronger. So this one not only increases my magic ability power, which is something I'm going to be using a lot as a mage, but also helps me recover cost, which is great because even though I run a cost recovery ability, Fanatic Soul, there are some abilities that take a fair amount of cost, and having something that helps with recovery for those higher cost skills and abilities is pretty great. From there, I have this funky little guy, Sweet Tooth Neurheon Staff. Might be pronouncing that wrong, I don't know. It increases both physical and magic ability power by 4XL, so again, just giving continual boost to the damage I'm going to be doing. And then it also recovers 5 cost, and it increases physical and magical ability power by 5XL when performing a critical hit. So another little bonus hit when those critical hits go off. And again, it scales with the number of staff type gear equipped up to a max of 5XL. Want to make sure I'm doing a lot of damage, and that is why I have things that just stack over and over and over because I'm a DPS character and I'm supposed to be murdering stuff. So this is a great way to do that. Just continual stacks of the same type of ability and making sure that they're infused and I have the skill all the way up so I can make the most of them. From there, we have the Moon Rabbit Staff. This one increases magic ability power by XL. You can target yourself to increase max HP by S for 20 seconds. And the greater the current HP is when attacking, the greater the increase of ability power up to a max of 4XL. And again, it scales with the number of staff type gear, which I am always sporting as a mage. All I have are staffs. It's the only thing that exists in the game that gives mages a boost to their attacks because charms were never actually created, even though technically they get a boost from that too. This one is a work in progress. It's Black Bride's Staff. Increases physical and magic ability power by 3XL. Performs a critical hit. Increases the target's break by XL. Increases ability power up to a max of 4XL if target is already in break. So break makes it more likely for you to hit a critical amount of damage when performing having an attack against an opponent or a monster, NPC, whatever you're fighting. So this works off of my previous piece of gear and also helps itself, making sure I make the most out of my damage. And it's kind of a cool looking staff. It's very Libra-like, which I appreciate. Again, it's something that it scales with the number of staff type pieces. From there, we have one of the best staffs, if not the best staff you could possibly get in the game at this point. It has its own skill that I can equip in the attack slot, and it's called Magic Dammer. It has the ability to target one enemy with an ability power of 180. It deals magic damage, reduces magic attack ability accuracy by 20% for 10 seconds, and reduces cost by 3. And then from there, we see the Universe's Staff main effect, which is that it increases physical and magic ability power by 3xl. It targets yourself to fill your units engaged by 5. So something that helps you just get your monsters out so you can get various buffs or cost recovery or whatever you happen to need at that point. It restores 5% of damage dealt as HP. Even though I run things like Siphon, which helps me recover my HP, and I usually have a cleric on my team, it's always good to have an ability that helps me recover cost on my own, simply because it helps keep some pressure off of the cleric, especially when they're having to spam abilities and just need a break because they're on cooldown or what have you. And also, it makes your enemies think they're about to finish you off, but then they don't because you're recovering health. Overall, it's just a great way to help keep yourself alive, even if it's only a little bit of help. And again, this scales with the number of staff gear pieces you have equipped. Moving along, we have the Tea Party Cake Stand Staff, which increases physical and magic ability power by XL, restores 10% of damage dealt as HP, and again, scales with your staff. So again, you'll see that my gear just builds on top of everything that comes before it. And for those of you who might not know, the gear pieces in your main slot and things all the way on the left are the most likely to go off, while the things all the way on the right are the least likely to go off. So you really want your better skills to be on the left side of your gear page, and the things that you don't need as much to be on the right. Moving on, we have Chocolate S Mic Stand Staff. It increases physical and magical ability power by 3xl, fills units engaged by 5, restores 5% of damage dealt as HP. Again, another scaling ability. So again, just building on everything that comes before it. And because this one doesn't have a skill like the others, I've put it in the final slot because it's static. It's always going to go off. And it increases physical and magical attack of staves, or what most people refer to as staffs, by 25%. And it's the absolute Xenos staff. Now that we've gone through my staffs, I'm going to go through my hats here, which are the things that clerics and archers and mages get the biggest boost from, along with some of the other classes. As you can see, I haven't filled it out all the way, but I've continued my Nyx gear here. And this one, the hair ornament, reduces magic damage taken by XL. Not particularly helpful in mages. Not that it's not helpful, but they're weakest to lancers, so having physical defense being the main point here would be ideal, but that's just not the case. I'm using this again to get the blessing from Nyx. It increases dark elemental defense by 60 and activates as a blessing skill when all the pieces are equipped together. From there, I have the Moon Rabbit Ribbon Hood, which reduces physical and magic damage taken by L, and the damage reduction scales with the number of hat type gear pieces equipped. So protecting me from both things, which is good because it's extra coverage. From there, I have this boy, Stormy Sea's Hair Ornament, which reduces physical damage taken by L and targets yourself to recover 5 costs. So again, building on cost recovery and some of the abilities you saw in my weapon section, while also making sure that I am protected. Next one up is this lovely little hat, Lilia Headdress, reduces magic damage taken by XL, and it scales with the number of hat gear pieces. Then you see another copy of Stormy Sea's hair ornament. From there, we have the Water Mirror headgear, reduces physical and magic damage taken by L+, and it scales with the number of hat type pieces. Then the Rabbit headband, which reduces physical and magic damage taken by L, and again, scales. And the last piece of headgear I have is the Dandelion bonnet, which reduces physical and magic damage taken by L, and again, it scales. So really just making sure I have coverage upon coverage upon coverage, building upon each other and scaling. Ideally with these abilities, it might be better in your case if you're, let's say, a lancer or a soldier, to do this sort of thing with a helm, simply because you get the most benefit from that because of your passives. And if you're a cleric or an archer, for example, like me, this would be the best way to go because you get the most passive benefit from wearing that type of gear. The clothing gear I have equipped is very similar. You can see I haven't quite filled it all the way out, but One day, if we continue to add more levels and more cost gaining quests, I might be able to fill it out at some point. As of right now, I have only filled this much out, and as you can see, I've continued my blessing gear in the first slot to make sure I get that blessing. And from there, I have, yes, an extraordinarily outdated piece of gear, but I love nulls. Anything that can negate damage is ideal in my book. I have chosen to wear Veluta's armored outfit, which is the one that nullifies magic damage, simply because the stats work a little better with Mage passives, even though it might be slightly more beneficial for me to wear something that protects me from physical damage because I am weak to Lancers. Next, I have the Rabbit Dress, which reflects physical and magic damage taken by L+, and this scales with the number of clothing type pieces equipped to a max of XL, and gear pieces needed for maximum effect are 5. I like reflecting damage because people who think they're going to finish you off might suddenly die. Yes, there are things that reduce the damage they take when things are reflected toward them, and there are ways around this, but I think it's always good to equip a few pieces of gear that are like this, especially if you have a lot of other gear pieces in your defensive set that simply reduce damage or do something else. Next up, I have Burning Western outfit, which reduces physical damage taken by XL+, pretty standard. Then I have the Storming Seas Raymond, which reduces physical damage taken by L and helps recover cost. So again, just building on the cost recovery because you always need cost in this game for everything you do, so you can never have enough of it, really. Then we have the Moon Rabbit Yukata Dress, which reduces physical and magic damage taken by L, and the damage reduction scales with the number of clothing type gear pieces equipped up to a max of XL. Again, just making sure I stay safe here. Then we have Clothing Mirror of XL ability on the White Rabbit Dress, which reflects physical and magic damage taken by L+, and again, it scales with the number of clothing type gear pieces that I have. And finally, we have the Nerheon's Clothing. This has a lot of different effects. It's Clothing of Harmony XL. It reduces physical and magic damage taken by L, reduces physical ability power by XL, and reduces magic ability power by XL. The damage reduction scales with the number of clothing type gear pieces equipped up to a max of XL. Again, just keeping yourself safe. That is what defensive gear is supposed to do, and if you have the added bonus of gear that can help you recover cost or build your Unison Gauge, that's even better, because those things can really turn the tide of a battle or help you out in a difficult quest, give your cleric a break if they're feeling overwhelmed, things like that. The last section of gear I'm going to talk about is my monster gear. This is something I have filled out all the way. Monsters are a little different than the other gear pieces, I feel, because especially within the context of guild battle, you really just want the ones that have the highest stats, so you can win guild battles and probably annihilate the other team. Within the context of quests, you might change things up depending on limitations for the quests. For example, there's some quests where you can only equip water type monsters and actually get to use them, so you want to keep things like that in mind. But for the most part, at least in my experience, I just keep the same monsters all the time, and they're whatever monsters I have that are the strongest in terms of stats. When there are stats that are more tied, let's say like a bunch of 41 cost monsters, which are pretty comparable for the most part, I like to try and keep monsters equipped that have a bunch of different abilities and effects. So, for example, I don't want to have like 5 cost recovery monsters. I'll have maybe 1 or 2 of those, and then something that helps with my Unison Gauge, something that buffs me and my team, and something that debuffs the enemy, and so on and so forth. Whenever possible, and not all monsters have this, equip a monster with a passive ability in your first slot so you actually get the benefit of the passive ability. In my main slot, I have put Athena, Star of Grace. If you press this little clipboard button, you can see if it has a passive ability. This one does. It's called Meteoric Magic Circle. It increases your character's max HP by 50% when equipped in the main slot. So basically, I wouldn't get this benefit if it wasn't in the main slot, which is why this creature is in the main slot. Now, as far as this creature is concerned, it has a number of different abilities. For example, it targets all enemies with an ability power of 350. It deals magic damage, that is the star type, 5 times. It penetrates damage reduction and damage reflection effects with a success value of 100, which is really great because everyone's equipping the sort of gear and you can now get through that and deal the most damage that you are able. Its ability power is boosted by 10 for each increase in skill level. It also targets all allies, increasing physical and magic attack ability power by 80 for 90 seconds, so a very decent buff. And then it also targets all allies, increasing ability power buff limit for physical attacks by 40 for 90 seconds. Does the same for magic. And then again, it targets all allies, reducing ability cooldown times except for certain abilities by 50% for 90 seconds, making sure that not only can you deal a lot of damage and your team can too, but that they can do it quickly to finish people off. It also applies diffusion to you and your allies. The next ability used will change from a specified single range target to targeting all except for certain abilities. It also applies buff removal resistance, preventing karma or any buff removal effect one time. Changes cost held limit to 50, which could be good or bad. Let's say your team has used all their cost. Gaining 50 isn't bad, but if you're all full, not the greatest. This is considered a demerit though. And finally, it targets yourself, applying barracks for 100 seconds. When in effect, damage to HP and CP will not be taken. It increases all stats by 100%, increases critical hit chance by 100%, increases physical and magic attack ability success value by 40, reduces cooldown time by 50%, removed after receiving a set amount of damage, 300% of max HP excluding buff and field effects. And lastly, it applies Fet Element, which increases all stats by 100%, increases cost recovery speed by 10, ability power is boosted by 30 when attacking an enemy in break, and to the allied field for 120 seconds. So a lot of different things, making sure my team is buffed, that I'm buffed, make sure we're in a better state to just destroy everybody. Next, I have Wadatsumi. This is a creature I have mainly for cost recovery and haste. Then I have the Midsummer Shine edition of Sindura, which I use to remove resurrection, wards, invincibility, damage, reflection, and continuous healing, and damage reduction effects from all enemies, to deal damage to my enemies, among other things. Aster is one of my favorite creatures that I have equipped. It deals a bunch of damage to my enemies, reduces their physical and magic ability power by 40 for 90 seconds, reduces all stats by 80% for 90 seconds, reduces status ailment resistance value by 100 for 90 seconds, applies debuff removal resistance that blocks debuff removal, special debuff removal, or Kismet one time, reduces their units engaged by 30, so if someone doesn't quite get it off, they're probably not going to for a little bit. It applies rage to yourself and Anguish Collapse on top of that. Then I have Epina, and I use her to deal damage, to apply Miracle to me and my team, to fill my team's units engaged by 30, and haste to my team. The other monsters in my set are stat 6, so I have Cheerleader Rutu, Itsuki Nakano, Kanade and Thea, and finally Shuten Doji. Now, some of you might be wondering about the placement of some of my monsters, and this is just because I like to have a variance of elements. This is mainly beneficial in the case of guild battle. For example, if your enemies lock a specific color, or you see them all throwing a specific color and you want to defend against that by using their opposite to weaken them, whatever is the elemental advantage, this is a great way to do that. And there you have it. That is the current set of gear that I am sporting on my Unison League Mage, Donna.Noble. I hope you liked my tour of my gear and see why I'm choosing the gear that I'm choosing, with an emphasis on weapons and monsters and less of an emphasis on defensive gear, because she's a DPS character. If you have any questions for me, feel free to stick them down below in the comments. And of course, if you like what you saw here today, please smash that like button until it's blue, subscribe, ring that bell so you always know what's up, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye guys!
Hi, Tisha Valenza, aka Poison Ivy, and you've just been watching King's Entertainment Reviews. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch.